Welcome to the XtextCasts. In this episode, we will extend the parameterized enum generation from the episode 2. In the episode 2, we define the DSL to define enums and generator that generates Java code. Our enums had one string parameter. Let's extend the DSL and the generator so that more parameters could be added. As a motivation for our goals, I wrote a simple program. This program is a file metadata editor. You can choose a file type here and enter some specific for this file type information. So, the audio, video and image are supported, and you see that some fields are shared between file types. For example, the width and height fields are shared between video and image, but absent in audio. So, in order to make this customizable, I used an parameterized enum. This enum contains our 4 types and defines for each type which attributes are irrelevant. This works as follows. If the parameter value is true, the corresponding field is shown. To get fields for audio, or for example for an image type, you take this row and the first parameter, the first boolean parameter, is a true, so the size, width and height are shown. Bitrate is here false, the stereo is false, and the last parameter is true, and this is a geotag, and geotag is shown. As you can see, the matching of the parameters is not quite simple. So, let's improve it. Let's start with the grammar. And this is an example of input that the grammar accepts. Let's alter this example first. I would like to define my boolean parameters as an ASCII table. For this example wizard page, we could define 2 boolean fields: verifiable and skippable. This should define whether a page could be verified or could be skipped. And the name and address can be verified, for example, and can be skipped. Submit cannot be skipped, but can be verified, for example. So, let's parse this kind of input. We begin with the parameter name list. This is this part. It begins with a pipe and is optional. So, let's define an optional block beginning with a pipe, and then this repeatable block that saves the ID in the parameter name list, followed by a pipe here. Then the parameter values we are going to parse in the same way. We accept here an optional block that starts with a pipe, followed by a list, and this going to be the p parameter value list, and I would like to define the new class here, Enum element parameter value, and this must be followed by a pipe. This Enum element parameter value is either plus or minus, and we assign the plus value to this boolean field, and if we match a plus here, then the true will be assigned to the value field. If the minus get passed, no value get assigned, so the default false value stays. We have here a little problem. The Xtext warns us that this Enum element parameter value class is not going to be instantiated every time. The problem is that this automatic instantiation happens only if at least one field gets assigned, and if we match plus here, then one field is assigned and everything goes well. But if the minus get matched, no field get assigned, and this class is not going to be instantiated by the Xtext. So, with a little tip from the warning here, we can fix this little problem. Now is everything okay. So let's run the generator. I would like to write a validation here. In our case, the number of parameter values have to be the same as the number of the parameter names. So let's write the validation method. The validation method has to begin with the check annotation, then public void, and the name is the irrelevant. So let's name it check Enum parameters number. And the parameter for this method is the starting point of our validation, and I would like to choose the Enum itself. Here we start with the iteration over Enum elements. For each Enum element, we will check that the number of Enum element values are the same, is equal to their count of the parameter names. And in case that the number is not equal, we will issue an error. And we just say invalid number of parameters. Then we provide the model element that caused the problem and the position in the grammar where the error should be shown. And for this case, we use this literals class and choose Enum element name, and this followed by -1. Now let's proceed with the generator. The generator had to be extended at several points. Here we have to provide the list of the parameter values. Here we have to provide the list of the parameter definitions. The fields are going to be defined here, And here we are going to define our getters for the new parameters. Here we have to generate our assignments. So let's start. We iterate over parameter names here, and we define a simple boolean attribute with a name of the parameter. Then assignment is a simple tool. We just assign the parameter to the corresponding attribute. Here we define our getters, and this is going to be public boolean is followed by the name modified so that the first letter is the upper letter, then the parentheses, braces, and returning name. So the last part is to generate this list of values and list of boolean definitions. Let's define the custom methods for this. Element, pass parameters, and here in the Enum def parameters. And let's start with the pass parameters. The pass parameters method has the enum element as a parameter, and here we have to convert the list of the boolean values to a string starting with a comma, space, then true, then comma, space, false, and so on. So let's iterate over the parameter value list and map this list to the list of strings, and each element of this list should be exactly this string, comma, space, and then true or false. And then we join our list with the empty string to get exactly this kind of result. And def parameter method starts with a enum parameter, and from the list of the names we have to produce the following string, comma, space, boolean p1, comma, space, boolean p2, and so on. So we start with enum parameter name list and map it to the list of the strings, comma, space, boolean, space, plus name, and join it together with an empty string. And we have to spell it right. Let's try it out. Let's add those two new boolean parameters to the page enum. So the page can be verifiable and skippable. And let me just define some values here. And this is skippable too, but submit not. And we have no errors. Let's try to add just one more parameter here. And we get our error, invalid number of parameters. So let's stick with the 2 parameters and take a look of the generated Java code. And this looks good. Now let's add the Enum generation to my small program. In order to do this, I go to the source folder here and define a new file. And I call it the file type penum. In order to save some time, I'm going to paste the DSL, and this defines the file type enum with plain video, audio and image elements, and these pluses and minuses are corresponding to those false and true values. And now we can get rid of our old-fashioned enum definition. And after we save our new penum file, we get the source scan directory generated, and after adding it to the class path, everything is done. We have our program using our new enum. So let's give it a try. And now it is there easy to test the program. Unknown type has no fields defined. The video type has size, bitrate and stereo defined. Audio has only bitrate and stereo, and image only size and geotagging. Thank you for watching XtextCasts. Go to the XtextCasts.org to get show notes, discussions and more episodes.